can't handle the true news. Bringing you the last line of defense against the borderist brain surgeons. It's William Danger Earthling, a true blue-blooded Earthling super patriot. And this is the Intel Crisis. As you can tell by my credentials, that any true Earthling would know makes one a true Terran natural, which is a VHS copy of Meatballs 3 and a BBQ packet. It doesn't get more Earth than that. Today we're going to talk about the political technology used to control your mind. The political compass. Created in 2001 by New Zealand journalist and amateur news surgeon Wayne Brittenden. It's indebted, according to the website, to the work of Wilhelm Reich, Hans Eisenach, and Theodor Adorno. Because of course this thing is inspired by a psychoanalyst, personality psychologist, and social theorist. It gained widespread popularity in the 2010s alongside the rise of social media and meme culture, becoming deeply embedded in online political discourse. Its rapid normalization in online political spaces has resulted to comedic horror and people presuming it to be an old, well-established academic concept in political science.
I think it's time we realize that the political compass is functionally obsolete because we're not in the same cultural moment anymore. Sure, during the 20th century,
The 20th century? Like the 1900s? This thing was made in 2001!
Its influence has been significant not because it maps political ideology particularly well, but because it reformats political consciousness into something simplified, consumable, and behaviorally manageable. Although this process of turning political ideology into simplistic behavioral policy training predates the compass by over half a century, it nonetheless hyper-intensified earlier developments, which we will briefly review and refer to as ideological reversity and ideological decoupling. To help us explain these complicated processes, here is being stuck in a vat.
Yeah, silly mammals. Ideological reversity occurs when surface policy positions replace the deeper worldview they originally emerged from, resulting in ideological labels being used to refer to specific policy sets. For example, liberalism goes from a specific worldview about the rule of sameness and enlightened contractualism to being used to refer to economic deregulation or social progressivism, leading one to use the term in combination with others, most infamously, in the format of
I am socially this and economically that.
ideological decoupling is the process through which political ideologies are atomized into measurable administrative modules for specialized data collection. Those policy set labels taken from broken down political ideologies are used here to quantify independently or comparatively how liberal or conservative a person, institution, or place supposedly is. For example, one might measure how liberal an economy is by its openness to private and multinational commercial interests. This trains people not to ask or investigate further, deeper political worldviews, but instead whether someone supports specific administrative policies which are already circulating among the incumbent politicians, parties, and electoral campaigns. Can I leave this vat now?
No, you must slather yourself more in the green techno jelly.
I'm not doing that.
Aww.
Alright, now how does this magical techno-wizardry work? The mechanism is as follows. Respondents answer 62 multi-choice statements using a 4-point scale, strongly agree, all the way to strongly disagree. Each response is assigned a weighted value, typically +1 to -1, depending on both direction and whether the item is categorized as economic or social. These weights are then aggregated across two orthogonal axes, economic left-right and social libertarian authoritarian, producing a two-dimensional coordinate with numbered coordinates. Each axis is conventionally bounded at +10, though real outputs usually fall within fractional intermediate values. For example, a result might read economic -5.25, social +0.67. These coordinates are then plotted onto a 4-quadrant grid. On the top are the authoritarian left, authoritarian right. On the bottom are libertarian left and libertarian right. The use of authoritarian libertarian here, packaged primarily as indications of top and bottom management. haha meme, they were both bottoms, and inclusive or exclusive culture and policy creation separates both concepts from anything historical or taxonomically useful as far as being concerned. The four quadrant format itself has spawned countless internet memes, even going beyond the topic of politics. This structure is not merely descriptive, but implicitly normalizing. It conditions political thought toward treating ideology as decomposable vectors rather than internally coherent worldviews. For example, the statement, I want universal health care, but only for my ethnic group, is implicitly decomposed into separable scoring components rather than treated as a unified ideological formation, leading one's political imagination to see the above statement as an isolated mathematical equation rather than as part of a wider political philosophical position requiring further exposition. Under the system's logic, it resolves into something structurally equivalent to universal health care equates to -1 econ plus ethnic exclusivity, which equates to +1 auth equals top left -1. These components are then summed up along orthogonal axes, yielding a composite coordinate approximately situated in the authoritarian left region of the grid. If this sounds like a bunch of complicated nonsense math, it's because it basically is. The user is thus positioned as both the instrument and the instrumentalist of analysis, essentially nudging the user into a voluntary form of self-instrumentalization, encouraged to externalize political belief as standardized inputs and then accept an externally generated ideological identity in return. This produces a feedback structure in which self-description is routed through predefined metric categories, encouraging individuals to reimagine political commitments as calculable trade-offs rather than holistic positions. By compelling users to map themselves along predefined axes, the compass becomes subtly internalized at a deep psychological level, gradually reshaping not only self-perception but also the very schema through which politics is understood. This makes the compass intuitively accessible for widespread use. It's apparent that the user-reported accuracy is caused and reinforced by a mild confirmation loop. The more one adapts to its categories, the more coherent the resulting placement appears. You get that accurate position because it's leading you there to find it. There isn't anything wrong with trying to map out or simplify political ideology, but the political compass doesn't merely do that. Rather, it reformats political consciousness into a system optimized for fast food ordering. Politics becomes less a matter of grand worldview formulation and more a process of McDonaldized self-curation through quantified preferences and behavioral metrics. McDonaldization describes the increasing dominance of efficiency, calculatability, predictability, and control through quantification within modern institutions, like how McDonald's is ran. The compass offers a rapid, standardized, and highly shareable method of processing political identity. Rather than requiring in-depth engagement with political theory and activism, the compass compresses ideology into a fast, consumable interface. Initially, identification with ideologicalism, which emerged prominently in the early 19th century, was shaped by a complex interaction between subjective and objective, here both using sociological senses, so internalizing social production and externalizing social production, which came to signify associations with written political traditions, collective organizations, and individual activism. Ideological affiliation wasn't achieved through this highly calculatable, predictable selection of controllable policy positions, but rather signified attachment to larger structures of meaning that arose from unpredictable, chaotic places of existential worry. Not to imply this meant every previous and current non-technocratic political self-identity is necessarily always done through grandiosely accurate and rigorously exercised application, but it does arise from an earnest mess of homeless meaning and method, which when left unmonitored pose a potential threat to moderate technocratic plans. The larger background of this transformation of politicalism as a programmatic sign to a policy sign was, to simplify, a long journey we will divide into three eras. The late 17th century to World War II that felt far more precarious and fragile in certain ideological ways, to people in what was the emerging liberal international order, which didn't fully exist until the post-45 world. This ambiguity of who has to settle the question of what would create permanent earthly solidity in the face of modernity's flux. Once this question was answered by the end of the Second World War, the emerging liberal international order increasingly presented moderate technocratic management as the final solution to ideological instability. Again, management, not ideology. because according to the ideology of moderate technocracy, there was no more need for belief in any ideology, including itself, and so people need not actively believe, fight, and name themselves moderate technocrats, or participate in any grander historical struggle, because what moderate technocracy demanded from people wasn't programmatic activity, but policy activity, to participate while heavily guided and proceduralized in taking data collection activities, which include voting. And so a quick, long journey of development began to turn political self-identity into policy preference. From 1945 to 1991, new ambiguity emerged. Why was there alienation within this supposed final solidity? Flux was still there. And yet the ethos told its people that their only response to this existential problem was drive through elections and take out mobilizations, resulting in all sorts of explosive events of terrorist action from enemies of the liberal international order attempting to end this plastic flux to the supporters attempting to reassert it through state-sponsored violence overseas. The last era, from 1991 to the present, has seen the whole infrastructure of the liberal technocratic order dying off and thrown into a free-for-all in the last decade alone, but its language and thinking still desperately cling to minds. Presumably, one would think we would see the return to the political ism as a programmatic sign, but really there is no such guarantee. The same goes for presuming the policy sign will continue strongly. The use of the word decomposition throughout isn't simply allegorical, as the composition of moderate technocratic brain surgery is atrophied by compressing, cannibalizing, and recycling it further into more blatant and crude interface displays as the compass does, meaning the policy sign is grossly necrotizing before our eyes, as people then take inspiration from the political compass by then making their own similar political questionnaires. What are anarchists to do in this age? Well, for starters, don't reverse and decouple anarchism into another word for policy. There are no anarchist policies to test and tease out in front of focus groups, electoral stages, and political offices. No, someone putting up their card after grocery shopping isn't anarchistic. It surely doesn't make you an anarchist either, as if we can somehow measure how anarchist someone is by what behavioral niceties they do. Anarchism isn't another vague methodology through which we can test out psychological nudging on a population, like scientists experimenting on lab rats. We must avoid technocratic trappings and learn to fully embrace the free part of free association by expressing ourselves as a grandiose cosmic project that will accept no substitutes. People aren't mere instruments to procedural means, they are universes in themselves. They, the muddied workers, the twilight prostitutes, and the carnival freaks, will make conscious the instrument of ideas and labor with their minds and hands, marching in unison against the limits of the unconscious.
Now that you know the truth, we can play the hit new music video Sweeping Being Stonia. Decide what you think, what you should know. Your thoughts are data, your dreams are scans. Design for compliance, their credit plans. The system flickers, the image warps. Reality
takes flight, breaking the pattern in the endless night.
Capitalism in the old definition comprises only financial capital, but actually human and social capital is as, and of course natural capital is as important as financial capital.